Well, hey, I am back. Did you miss me? I do hope you missed me. Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks, but hey, I'm back to business as usual here at Shanghala, and that means a weekly haul video. So, here are the books that I bought on December 9th, 2020 at my local comic book store. Going to tell you what I bought, why I bought them, and a little different this time out. I've had a chance to read these books, so I will also tell you what I thought about what I bought. Not big reviews, but just kind of little, mini capsule comments, if you will. After that, we'll talk about the things I passed on, what I snubbed this week. Is your favorite book on that list? And then finally, because I did only get 5 new books this week, that means dollar boxes. Did a little diving into the dollar bins and came away with this fat stack of wholesome comic book goodness. What did I get? Did I find any real gems? Any great dollar values? Well, if you like comic books, this is the video for you, so stick around and find out. Hey there, Bubby. Welcome to Shanghala. My name is Duke, and yes, this is another weekly haul video. So let's get to it then. Let's talk about the books that I bought this week, December 9th, 2020. And for the record, as always, I get my books at .com Comics and Collectibles in Freeport, Maine. So the first book was actually my best book of the week, Bill and Ted Are Doomed, number 4 of 4 from Dark Horse Comics. The irony here is that although this is my best scored book of the week, and you can see the score of 74.75, and even though this is the best scored book of the week, if I had it to do all over again, would I have bought this series? Probably not. I mean, I bought it because it's Evan Dorkin, and you've got Bill and Ted looking very milk and cheese here on the cover. It's a good cover. It's a good book. I mean, the art is very charming. It's fun, but it's there's no laugh out loud moments. There's no great satirical insights. It's just kind of what you might expect, kind of straight ahead Bill and Ted stuff. Maybe my time for Bill and Ted has passed. I haven't seen the original movies since the 90s. I never did see the most recent movie, because I'm not paying $20 to rent a movie at home. I'm sorry, that's just never going to happen. And I got to admit that, frankly, for me, Bill and Ted's dialogue sounds a lot better than it reads. Although, again, maybe it's just, my time for Bill and Ted has passed. I don't know. But, again, this was all just kind of very standard, straight-ahead stuff. Some great creators, Dorkin and Roger Landridge on the art. But, again, probably, I wouldn't buy this again. So can I recommend it to you? Maybe not. I think there is a lot of potential for an ongoing Bill and Ted series. But again, at the same time, such a thing could be incredibly lame. This one isn't, lame per se, but it's just kind of there. So, yeah, I don't know. The next book, The Cimmerian, The Frost Giant's Daughter, is something that was actually recommended to me by a viewer of this channel. So thank you very much for that. It is the very first book I have ever purchased from Ablaze Comics. And I guess The Cimmerian is released as a series of miniseries. So this is a first issue of The Frost Giant's Daughter. And it is a direct adaptation of the Robert E. Howard short story of the same title that came out in 1934. And kind of a neat thing, it actually, at the end here, it actually reprints that original story. So that's kind of cool. Now, I've been reading Conan comic books off and on for, 40 years. I've never actually read anything by Robert E. Howard. Having read this, I'm not sure that I would go out of my way to read something by him again. And I'm a big fan of writers like P.G. Wodehouse, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Conan Doyle, H.L. Mencken. So I am used to a writing style much different than kind of the Spartan stuff we get today, something that's a little more ornate, as it were. But this was just, it was kind of a slog to get through this. Now, the other thing about this book, you know how they say a picture's worth 1,000 words? Well, you've got 19 pages of pictures here, and that 19 pages pretty much tells the same story Howard did in these first 2 paragraphs. I mean, it does the whole 4 pages, that are reprinted here, but effectively, essentially, it's just those first two paragraphs that's told here, with a little bit of an addition, from the point of view of the troops first approaching the battle, of the actual frost giant's daughter up on the mountain watching the battle that, Howard doesn't really get into in the story. But in the end, not much really happens here. The art is very nice. I do like the art. It reminds me a great deal of Keith Giffen, Larry Malstead, Great Darkness era Legion of Superheroes. So I do like the art, but the problem is you've got a lot of stuff like this. And, and I get on a metatextual sense what this is all about, that just sort of the blurred frenzy of a chaotic, battle, and then kind of highlighting, her observation of it. But, here you've got 2 whole pages of that, which is effectively nothing. That's just 2 pages of mud, really, a very impressionistic view of the battle. And when you couple that with, there's 2 pages at the beginning, and there's another 2 pages. So there's 4 of your 19 pages, 6 if you count the other 2-page spread we looked at. I literally read this book in about 6.5 minutes. So if it wasn't for taking the time to read the Conan story and then this little 5-page preview thing in the back, which Unsacred is the name of the book, and this really didn't impress me. It's cute to look at, but it didn't really impress me enough as something that I would want to buy. Overall, this book took about 19.5 minutes to read, which I spent the most time with this book of anything I bought this week. But again, the story itself, the comic book story, only read in about 6.5 minutes. So is that worth $4? Came out to 60.6 cents a minute, which is a prime example of why comic books fail these days. They're just not a good value compared to any other form of entertainment. So I am very happy, the viewer who recommended this book to me. I am going to stick with this book through this entire limited series. Maybe my impression will change. But as for right now, it's good art. It's good packaging. Everything is kind of great, except that it's not that great. So, it's really a tough call. The cover freaks me out a little bit too. I mean, that's a manga kind of looking thing. There were 9 covers for this issue, by the way, but this one makes me feel kind of like a pedophile just looking at it. And again, here we go, a lot of wasted space, and I understand, again, metatextually what's going on here, that we're trying to convey the vast openness of the northern mountains, and her little speck on it, but you convey the same thing here, and so to me that's just effectively 2 wasted pages when you only have 19 pages of story, and here's, again, very decompressed. I get why this is done and what's going on here, but that page reads in about 12 seconds. So, a little decompression is good, or can be effective, I should say, but too much of it, yeah, I don't know. If it wasn't for the inclusion of the original Robert E. Howard story in here, this would have been a no for any subsequent issues, even as nice as the art and packaging is. As it is, yeah, I'm going to finish that out, and we'll decide at the end, whether I buy any subsequent Cimmerian series. All right, moving on to crossover number 2. It's a good cover. I love this logo. I don't know why, but that logo just speaks to me. Seeing that on the stands, it just makes me want to pick it up and see what's going on. So it's a very effective logo. But the story inside by Donny Cates. Well, one thing that doesn't work for me is this whole thing where the characters from the comic book universe have this dot matrix thing. It's overdone. Back in the day, these dots wouldn't have been that big. It would have blended in so that to your eye, it looked flesh-toned. This is over-exaggerated. It looks like she's got the mumps. It bugs me. It draws me out of the story every time I look at it. This is also, it's a lot of talky talk. It's a lot of people doing things that don't make a lot of sense. He says, here, don't you want us to not tell your father? Well, your father was there when you were arrested in the last issue. He ought to know. He ought to be right there bailing you out anyway. You got this character here kind of giving away the whole thing to this nondescript kid, that he never would do that. And then it turns into kind of a where's the other page of this? Turns into kind of, I guess, with the comic book characters in our universe, an illegal alien kind of allegory, which is, okay. Donny Cates, to his credit, doesn't hit us too hard over the head with a political point of view here. Not that a political point of view is ever necessarily a bad thing. It's just when it's done badly that it's grating. But the problem with this book is that it's a lot of talking heads, as you can see here, that don't really say much of anything. The other thing, too, that was weird is this guy, he's back home and asking her what happened. Where does it start out? I guess back home, and she arrives and asking her what happened and all that. But he was there. He was in the building when it got firebombed, the Molotov cocktails thrown in the last issue. So did he just split and run at that point? It's not really clear. Or if Cates just kind of lost the thread. But again, this is a lot of very decompressed stuff with nothing that really happens and a lot of talking heads not saying much about anything. I likened the last issue, the debut issue, #1, as being written like it was a TV show. And effectively what you got in the first issue was the cold open up until the rolling of the opening credits. This is like coming in after the first commercial break, sitting through 10 minutes of the second commercial break, and now we're going to get up and go away for 30 days and come back for the next 10 minutes next week. So I have dropped crossover. Now, I made that decision after the first issue, so I'm purchased up through #3 and maybe #4, I can't remember. But I decided at the first issue that I was dropping crossover, and I know Donny Cates is hot right now, but just doesn't do it for me. This is another book that I have decided to drop. This is Norse Mythology. It's a P. Craig Russell adaptation of the Neil Gaiman book. This is #3. And this one, well, this read in about 8.5 minutes, so this wasn't much of a dollar value either for $4. The art by Russell, it's laid out okay. It's kind of very stiff in some places, very kind of, it's just, it looks more like the initial layout than it does the finished artwork to me. But the worst thing here, you've got an actual story going on about the builder who builds the walls around Asgard, but then it just stops. Like right at the end, just as things are getting interesting, as something's starting to happen, we get a lot of time just, standing around, people talking about him building the wall. Just as things start to really happen and get good, it ends. And again, I was like, is this to be continued, or was that the end of the story? Was it supposed to somehow end like that? And if you read this next issue thing, I guess we get the idea that this will continue next issue. And I have already ordered the next issue. I think I'm ordered up to 5, and that's where I'll stop. And I don't know if that's actually going to be the end of the series or not. I don't know if this is how many issues this is going to take to adapt the book, but I just wasn't very satisfied with this at all. Don't know what else I can say about it other than that. I guess for me, maybe the worst thing about this book too is not just that it ends so abruptly, just as things were starting to happen, but this whole book really could have been told in 2 or 3 pages, the fable that is told here. And so in that sense, it's very much like this Conan book, the Cimmerian, Frost Giant's Daughter, where you've got these 19 pages which effectively just tell these 2 paragraphs. This whole thing here, really, if you wanted to, you could have done everything that's in this book, these 20 some odd pages, you could have done in maybe 2 or 4. You could have finished the tale in this one issue instead of just stopping it right in the middle. So that wasn't for me, and I am dropping Norse Mythology. All right. And lastly for the new books, Strange Academy. The cover commits the same sin as the inside of the book. It's too dark. It's it's almost like mud. It's hard to tell what's going on. So they need really a lighter hand with the coloring. This book basically is all looking for this fella here. You know, he got lost in the last issue. They spent some time looking for him. Although, you know, here's 2 pages of these two looking for him, Zelda and Magic, that really ultimately comes to nothing. We get to the kids and the teachers looking for him. Here's another page where the baby frost giant comes in and collapses, and that really amounts to nothing. And then we kind of get at it, and, you know, I don't know. We've got here where Zoe, we've learned that she's a zombie. That should have been really the gist of the whole issue. That really plays out over just kind of 2.5 pages. That should have been the gist of this whole issue, so that, you know, as we have the continued story of looking for this character, whose name I'm forgetting at this second, whom they do find at the end, except twist, he's dead. So that you would have had something in this issue that was introduced, explored, and resolved within the confines of this issue. That would have made it more of a more satisfying reading experience. As it is, it's just kind of the middle piece of an ongoing thing. So it doesn't really stand on its own as a single issue, as a reading experience. It's just kind of, you know, you could almost have skipped this entire issue. You know, if you were at the last issue where he was lost, and then you skip this issue, and then just come in next issue where they found him but he's dead, you didn't really need this issue at all, other than the revelation that Zoe's a zombie, but we don't do anything with that other than, oh my God, she's a zombie. That's it. So, you know, I'm giving this book a hard time, but I've got to say that Strange Academy is one of only 2 Marvel ongoing series that I'm buying right now. This and Daredevil. So I do like this book, but maybe because I like it, I'm a little extra hard on it. But I think Strange Academy needs better editing in order to make each issue stand on its own. Again, with something that's introduced, explored, and resolved as part of the ongoing story, so that it's you get, you know, a better reading experience, a better dollar value. The other thing too, again, like I said, they really need to lighten up the colors, because you really can't tell what's going on. And then maybe from, you know, time to time, the artist Humberto Ramos, who was great, I love his art, but his layouts are not always the best. You know, like here they come out of the tunnel, and here are all these people they're trying to get away from, waiting for them. That should have been the large panel, not this one where they're going into the tunnel. So there's a lot of weird artistic choices made that I don't think really complement the storytelling. You know, and the panels don't always transition really great one to the other. But maybe that's, again, because there's no spotted blacks leading the eye, or because the coloring is so dark, everything is spotted black. So, yeah, again, Strange Academy is a good book. It could be a lot better book. I don't think the sales on this are very good, and that's too bad, because this is a great concept. All the young magic users in the Marvel Universe, it's basically, you know, Harry Potter and the Marvel Universe. But, you know, as a concept, this book could easily last, should easily last 100, 200, 300 issues, even if writer Scotty Young and the artist Humberto Ramos were to move on. This concept should still have legs. So I don't know what will happen in the future. We've got a trend lately of Marvel and DC doing larger books, not really quite anthologies, but more of 40 and 48 page books as opposed to the regular floppies. That's kind of I don't want to call it a sales gimmick, but it's an idea that's been around since the early 70s. You know, comic books shrank and shrank and shrank and shrank for so long to try and remain at that 10 or 12 or 15 cent price point. And then they started to expand in size again. And that is good for the retailer, because it gives them a chance to make more money from the same rack space. And often it's better for the reader, because, you know, the larger package ends up being less per page. So maybe what would help this book is if they made it, you know, a 48 page book instead of the standard, well, Marvel is only 28 pages. You know, with the covers, it's 32. But maybe if they revived Strange Tales, and you had the Strange Academy as a lead, and then maybe as a backup Doctor Strange. And maybe even to keep the price down, they could do the Doctor Strange stories black and white. It could be like a Batman black and white kind of thing, where you have really high quality writers and artists. Okay, give me your best 10 or 12 page Doctor Strange story, and that's kind of the backup. Maybe that package would help this book to survive. As it is, I'm afraid this book isn't much longer for this world, which is too bad, despite all of the complaints I've just made. It is, again, one of only 2 ongoing books I'm buying from Marvel at the moment. So there you go. Those are the 5 books I bought this week. That was maybe a little longer with the reviews than I had planned it to be. So let's kind of truncate this part a little bit. And that's what I didn't buy. Well, I'm not buying anything that's King in Black related from Marvel. I'm totally checked out on events. I am burnt on events. I have event fatigue, if you will. They're a waste of money. If you try and buy just the main series, you don't get the full story. If you buy everything, it's too disjointed. Marvel and DC both can't seem to edit together a big event anymore. It costs just too damn much money to be in on an event. So I'm totally checked out on King in Black. Anything that crosses over into King in Black, I'm not buying. Over at DC, the whole Endless Winter thing, I'm not buying. And again, it's the same thing. It's a 9-issue series, but each issue is kind of a different creative team. And once upon a time, back in the late 80s, early 90s with the Superman books, DC did a great job of telling one continuing story across multiple titles with multiple creative teams. But the last 20 years or so, they just haven't been able to pull that off. And I'm afraid this Endless Winter thing is just going to be a disjointed mess. Plus, there's a lot of creators in there that I don't like. Mark Waid, Ron Mars, Mags Vasidio. I've got no use for any of them. Ron Mars has blocked me on Twitter, so I'm not buying anything he does anyway. So I just kind of checked out on DC this month. The other thing, the one big new thing that came out this week that I passed on was Batman Black and White. I just mentioned that book a moment ago. The problem with this new Batman Black and White series is it's 48 pages for $5.99. So that's $2 more than a regular DC comic book. And it seems to me that even with the added pages, even with maybe the added cost of the creators that they chose to involve, maybe being more high profile creators and commanding a little bit of a better page rate, when you cut out the color, you have no colorist, you have no color separation cost, you have no printing cost for the coloring. It seems to me that 48-page book, even with the higher cost of the talent, and given that it's a Batman book, so it's going to sell well, it should have been, if not less expensive than a regular book, at least the same price. So, at the $5.99 for the 48 pages, considering it's black and white, that book just seemed like a cash grab to me. I did flip through it on the stands. I took a look at it, and it just didn't seem to be anything that reached out to me that was like, yeah, I'll have to try these stories. These look like good stories. They just look like kind of standard stuff. So who knows? If I have another small week, maybe I'll try that book out if it's still on the stands, if it hasn't sold out. But as it is, I did pass on Batman Black and White. So there you go. If something did come out on February 9th, it's one of your favorite books, and you didn't see me review it here, didn't hear me mention it specifically, then please do in the comments below. Tell me why you think that book is great, why I should be trying it. Because again, as with The Frost Giant's Daughter here, I will listen to my viewers. If a viewer really, sells something, touts something as being great, I will try it. And even though I didn't feel this book was a great value, I'm going to stick with this because, again, a viewer recommended it. So please do, by all means, let me know down below what you think I should be buying. Anything that came out that I didn't buy, haven't mentioned. All right, finally, we are on to the dollar books. And so, if you're, a publisher, an editor, any kind of creative person, and you see I didn't buy your book that came out this week, you may want to ask yourself why. Why are these dollar books, why were they deemed a better buy to me than the new books? Well, I can tell you one reason. These books here cost about 20 bucks. So I had about 15, maybe 20 bucks if I'm pushing it in my budget this week. So I could have bought another 4 new books, maybe 3, maybe 4 new books. Instead, I chose to buy for the same money these 20 older books. These are mostly from the early 80s. These books have read anywhere from, again, 6.5 minutes for this one, up to the Bill and Ted book. Took me a little over 14 minutes to read. Each one of these, I guarantee you, is going to probably take 20 or 30 minutes. Just because, from the early 80s, the storytelling was different. Things weren't so decompressed. So, these books are just a better value to me. On a dollar value basis, they're a better value on an entertainment value basis. So that's why I got these 20 books rather than the 4 new books I could have got for same money. Because not only did I get 4 times as many books, I will have about 10 times as much, entertainment, reading time. So Alien Worlds, this was an 8-issue anthology series from Pacific Comics. Came out in the early 80s. This was a sci-fi anthology. Pacific Comics, if you don't know, was a distributor that got into the business of actually making comics. And so I now have, I think, 4 or 5 of these. I've got a couple left in order to complete the run. But, if anything here in these dollar books jumps out at you, you want to see kind of a retro review, do let me know. But that's a fun thing. And actually, Pacific Comics, they were only in business for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years. So their total output maybe comes to, I don't know, 100, 120 issues or so. And so there are a lot of companies like that I've been kind of trying to collect everything they put out. And I don't know exactly where I am with Pacific, but again, this one series, I do need a couple more. These here, these 2, All Out War number 1 and 2, that actually completes this series for me. I believe this was a 6-issue series from the late 70s, early 80s. It's one of DC's dollar books, and it is exactly what the title promises, All Out War. So even though these are not super high grade, these are probably 7s, for $1, you can't go wrong, the same price they were originally. So those will be fun books to read. Another look inside there. This Captain Marvel number 50, starring the Avengers. Iron Man's head doesn't sit on his shoulders quite right there. This is really just a hole filler. I mean, again, for $1, you can't go wrong, right? Cerebus I was never into at the time when it first came out, but I have been kind of slowly filling in the series from dollar bins and whatnot. And so this was issue 200. And if you've never seen a Cerebus book, here's a little bit of what it looks like inside. This also was just a hole filler for me. Ghost number 109. This is early 80s. It does have, unfortunately, a grocery store stamp on it. Looks like they tried to sell it for 58 cents. So that's unfortunate. But again, the grade is fine. That sticker, I'm willing to deal with that. Give me a chance to read it. The condition, again, it's not super high grade. This is probably because of the sticker, a 7. Without it, it might be a 7.5 and 8. Perfectly acceptable in my collection. This one was a nice find in the dollar bin. Marines Attack number 1 from Charlton Comics. This is 1964. So that's fun. So I'll enjoy reading that. Marvel Fanfare. This is another hole filler, and that one that pretty much that brings me up to the first 45, 46 issues or so. So it's just kind of the back end of the run that I need to fill in. And Marvel Fanfare gets really zero love these days. These books pretty much sell by the pound. Dr. Spectre, or more correctly, The Occult Files of Dr. Spectre. Early mid-70s book at 25 cents. I don't have many issues of this title. But again, for $1, it's like, what the hell? Yeah, absolutely. I'll try that. This is another Pacific title, Pacific Percents. This was a 4-issue anthology series. The Wildly Plausible Plight of Erie Smith and Walter Weary. I have no idea what this is about. But I now have the 2nd and 3rd issue, so I just need the 1st and 4th. The other reason, though, to buy this is Steve Ditko's Missing Man. So you've also got Vanity, whoever the hell she is. There's Ditko's Missing Man. So that's really what recommends this book to me. And it really takes up most of the book. This Walter Weary, Erie Smith thing is only the first few pages. This one I couldn't resist. Rainbow Bright and the Star Stealers. It's a one-shot movie adaptation. And I was like, yeah, for $1, sure. And I think Ethan Van Sciver is doing something, a Rainbow Brute or something like that, which is a take on this. So I had to try that. This was a nice find. A one-shot from Eclipse Comics, Dave Stevens Rocketeer Special Edition. Do love me some Rocketeer. Do love me some Dave Stevens. So it's kind of sad that he's no longer with us. But that's some good stuff. So for me, that might have been my best find overall out of this dive. Actually, second best, because coming up is another one out of this dive into the dollar bins. Sergio Aragone's Boogeyman. This is a 4-issue Dark Horse series. So I've got number 1. This, though, Gru, Aragones and Mark Avener, they've put out probably, 1,000 issues of Gru from a dozen different publishers. But the first run was, I think, 8 issues or so from Pacific Comics. And I've got, I think 1, 4, and 7 or something. So now I've got about half the run. I mean, that is what it is. That's Gru, all right. But, filling in that original Pacific Comics run of Gru is kind of a goal of mine. Space 1999 from Charlton Comics, 30 center, so that's mid-70s, a John Byrne cover. I don't think Byrne's doing the art inside. No, oh, it is John Byrne art inside. Interesting. So that's pretty early John Byrne art because this is 1976. If you don't know, Space 1999 was a TV show from the early 70s. Came out kind of just before Star Wars hit. It might have been a bigger thing if it had come along after Star Wars. So yeah, some early John Byrne, and again, it's maybe a 7, could be a 6.5, but well, actually, it's a little wrinkled. It's probably closer to a 5.5, frankly. But for $1, yeah, you can't go wrong. I'll definitely try that. And I can't remember how many issues that went. Not that many. Now this one, this was kind of a freebie because it was actually stuck in the same bag as this book. So it was in between the comic and the backing board that it was in with. And this is just a what is it? Late 80s promo book. National Committee for Prevention of Child Abuse. Spider-Man and Power Pack. Jim Mooney pencils. And so, that's just kind of a curiosity kind of thing. This is only like a 16-page book. This one, Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, 246. It's 246 because some little hooligan wrote the number right there. I have this issue, but this is the Whitman variant. So this would have been sold originally in the Whitman 3-backs in department stores rather than, on the newsstand or in a comic book store. So this is 1978. And I'm a big fan of the Legion. So yeah, getting a Whitman variant of one of those issues, that's a yes for me. Even though, again, this is maybe a 6.5, 6 probably. And then finally, this was a good little find as well. Charlton Comics, early 70s, Yang. So this is kind of a kung fu kind of thing. But I got Yang. Oops, I knocked over Mordrew. Sorry, Mordrew. I got Yang number 1, 2, and 3. So that's a pretty good deal. And I already had number 4. I think this series ran about 17, 18 issues. And the art is kind of basic. But, you know, I think I'm gonna review those first 4 issues. I'll do like a review of all of them as one. So there you go. What do you think of my dollar finds? Anything there that you wish you had? Anything that you're surprised I bought? And I guess maybe the same question for the new books. So that's it. That was the haul for this week. I thank you. Mordrew thanks you. And until next time, goodbye, good luck, and please be good to each other.